Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Live Inside GWM. I'm Luke Huysmann, your host for this event as always. And as I mentioned, we are live where anything can happen, so buckle up. This is of course your all access pass to the behind the scenes of everything in the world of GWM. Again, whether you've stumbled upon this video by accident, whether you've known the brand for years or you're just becoming familiar with it, or you're part of our dealer network, we know everyone watching tonight is gonna get something out of this. And since we are live, this is the perfect time to throw your questions, your burning questions, into a comment below. We've got our GWM experts standing by, we're monitoring the thread, and we're gonna get to try and answer as many of those questions a little later on as possible. So start now, add them in a comment below. Something new for this episode of Inside GWM. Who wants to win? We all love winning free stuff. A $100 Ampol fuel voucher. Well, we've got 3 up for grabs today, and all you need to do is put your best off-road moment in a comment below, post it to either Facebook or Instagram. Use these hashtags, hashtag GWM Australia or hashtag Go With More, and do it by Monday, the 14th of July. Whether it's a picture of your rig covered in mud and dust, or a recovery mission that's gone horribly wrong, show us, tell us about it, and the best ones are gonna get picked for a fuel voucher. Those winners will be announced next week. Before we kick into gear, I wanna take a quick moment to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we're on today and pay my respects to elders past and present. All right, tonight is a big one. That cannot be understated enough. We're talking Beer OClock Hill. And if you don't know about it, you're gonna find out about it. It's not the nickname of your local pub. This is an actual place, and it is something of a mecca, something of a Mount Everest in the 4x4 community. We recently took on this legendary 4x4 challenge at the Springs Adventure Park in Queensland with 3 heavy hitters. And why did GWM go there? It was simple. To prove to the Australian 4x4 community that GWM's off-road vehicles are true, proper 4x4 products with serious capabilities off the beaten track. So, don't just take my word for it. Let me introduce you to tonight's special guests who are going to tell you all about it. Firstly, GWM's Senior Product Specialist, Tim Leong, is back with all of his GWM insights. And with him tonight is an extra special guest. We've got Simon Christie, TV host, producer, content creator, hardcore 4x4 enthusiast, who you're about to see drive these 3 vehicles up Beer OClock Hill. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for your time today.
Thank you, Luke. It's good to be here.
Excellent. I love these big smiles. Simon, tell us a little bit about Beer OClock Hill and why is it so important to the 4x4 community?
This is an iconic hill climb for a number of reasons. It's not a long hill climb, it's not in an amazingly beautiful spot like the Victorian High Country. It's nestled in front of a campground at the Springs 4x4 Park, partway between Warwick and Stanthorpe in southeast Queensland. 4x4 parks, you've got to understand the culture in Queensland. There's not a huge amount of places to go wheeling except for the beaches. So if you want to do some bush, some challenging four-wheel driving, you've basically got to go to a four-wheel drive park. Now in recent years, Beer OClock Hill has been there for many decades, but in recent years, the Springs 4x4 Park has emerged to be the crown jewel for Australian four-wheel drivers as far as parks are concerned. It's being run well, it's got a great range of tracks, it's growing, and the number of events that they've got there, the number of challenges, the number of entertaining places, but also the number of campsites and well looked after areas is just an excellent, perfect, pristine spot. Now right in the middle of all that, you've got this challenge. It's a nice hill climb that's not long enough to be ridiculously overwhelming, but it's short enough, steep enough, and nasty enough to be a nerve-wracking challenge for most people. So you're in a situation where you've got all of these heroes, keyboard warriors online who are seeing the videos coming out about Beer OClock Hill on a constant basis, and they're saying, I could drive that in Grandma's Corolla. Well, we've seen a number of vehicles have a crack and not all the cars can get up. It is a tough challenge. But these same heroes, when they get to the Springs 4x4 Park, probably around 80% of them walk to the foot of that hill, look up it, their face turns white, their mouth opens up and they just nod their head like, no way, I'm not having a go. So it has an overbearing, overwhelming presence. So it's in one of the best four-wheel drive parks in Queensland. It's enough of a challenge that it can be safely done, but it's still hard enough that you've actually got to really work it to get to the top. And you've got to have a vehicle that's seriously capable, but it's also in a spot that's right at the foot of this beautiful campground where everybody can see it. So Beer OClock Hill is basically 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Most people sit back, crack open a tinny, it's Beer OClock time, and we get to sit down and watch the entertainment, which is people having a crack at this literally insane hill.
And you kind of touched on it a little bit then too. For those that maybe don't work in the world of video flattens everything. Nothing looks steep on camera. So if it looks remotely like a hill, it is proper steep.
It's seriously insane. And like I said, people when they walk to the foot of it, 80% of them will say, no, I'm not driving it. It really does take some big kahunas to actually stand there and say, I'm going to drive it, and then have the confidence in your vehicle. So we get people who are brave, we get people who are confident and secure in their skill set, we get people who have a very well set up vehicle and know how to drive, and we get a lot of idiots who are very entertaining, who just go too hard with too much bravado. And I mean, Lucas, the park owner, he estimates that hill has caused around $1 million worth of damage to vehicles. So it is a place where if you go too hard, if you go out there with too much bravado, too much right foot, if you get yourself into a bad situation, you're going to break things. So that risk is always there, which makes the hill a bit more iconic and a bit more of a challenge.
Unforgiving, I think, is the takeaway there. So, Tim,
Yep.
Simon just mentioned you need confidence,
Yes.
you need skill, but then you also need a capable vehicle. So tell us about the 3 vehicles that GWM took to tackle this. That's a tongue twister.
Yeah, so GWM has sent 3 vehicles up Beer OClock Hill, with Cannon Alpha PHEV being the star of it. It is a brand new, technology and plug-in and all that. But fundamentally, the core of GWM vehicles are still 4x4, true 4x4, which is why we wanted to demonstrate that. Apart from the Alpha, we also have the Cannon XSR that made it up the hill 100% stock as it comes from the factory. And then a Tank 300 diesel as well, which just got released not too long ago in about Feb earlier this year.
Okay, well, that sets the scene for everyone. So for all of you watching, if you've seen the videos, great. For those of you that haven't, here's a taste. Here are all 3 vehicles and their attempts at Beer OClock Hill. Welcome to the Spring 4x4 Park, Queensland's rugged off-road playground, where GWM puts 3 off-road titans to the test. First, the Mickey Thompson test track. Wheel articulation, approach, breakover and departure angles. It's the perfect proving ground.
The Springs always provides a wild ride.
Next, Tank Hill, a nice rocky incline with a rewarding view. Then the ultimate challenge, Beer OClock Hill. Steep, rough, unforgiving, no second chances. The first runs, we did it with basic all-terrain tyres. The XSR attempting it 100% stock from the factory, and the hill made sure we felt it. Remember this date, 21st of May 2025 is when a box-standard Cannon XSR conquered Beer OClock Hill, the second factory-spec vehicle to ever scale this rocky, unforgiving 100-metre climb. With some basic all-terrain tyres, the Tank 300 Ultra Diesel conquered Beer OClock Hill, giving our 4-wheel drive experts a shock.
Guys, that is an exhilarating ride.
But let's not forget the star of the show, the recently launched stock Cannon Alpha PHEV, with a set of Mickey Thompson's all-terrain tyres, became the first plug-in hybrid vehicle to conquer Beer OClock Hill. High 4T for the win.
That is absolutely incredible, man. Like, I've seen a lot of vehicles attempt this hill. Not many in the wet. It was very impressive.
We're not here to break a vehicle, we're here to try and get to the top and prove what these cars can do.
Stock suspension, factory components, just a set of tyres, and now Beer OClock certified.
For a factory vehicle to drive up Beer OClock Hill with the confidence that these vehicles have, that's a win for me.
We've just smashed that, like seriously, dozens and dozens of times, both of us, confidence all the way, and that will take us to the airport tonight.
Diesel, petrol hybrid, plug-in hybrid. No matter how you power it, GWM will get you there and, more importantly, get you back. GWM, go with more. There you go. If you weren't impressed by that and some of Simon's driving skills there, I love the expressions, I love the enthusiasm. If you weren't impressed by that, well, we're just going to have to dig a little bit deeper into this. I had the pleasure, you mentioned Lucas before, Lucas Brie from Team Off-Road, who owns Beer OClock Hill. I got to sit down with him a little earlier on and have a chat about Beer OClock Hill and its importance to the 4x4 community. So check this out. Lucas, thank you so much for your time today, mate.
Mate, just happy to be here and happy to spread the word of the GWM on Beer OClock Hill.
Well, let's get into it. Can you give us a rundown of the hill? Basically, how long has it been around for and how did it get so notorious?
Well, it started a long, long time ago, even before I was here, with comp trucks. They've cut it in and it's just over time, it's just formed itself into the extreme, insane obstacle that it is today. So 60 metres long, step-ups of 1.5 metre holes. Like it's a feat to get to the top of the thing, let alone get a car up it. Walking up it's enough.
I refer to it as a behemoth. That's probably a decent word, right?
Yeah, it is a behemoth. Well, I'll tell you, the latest thing that I heard, which was pretty cool, they're calling it the Nürburgring of Australia. So it's the ultimate testing ground for a full drive in this country.
I love that.
I'm pretty stoked with that.
Well, what big achievements have you witnessed there over the years and what exactly does it take to conquer the hill, or now the Nürburgring?
Well, there's a few things, mate. I think obviously the car has to be set up right. You need a good, reliable car that's very, very capable, and you need a level-headed, driver that's very, very experienced in off-road situations. Because, like, when you hit some of these high points and some of these hollows and holes, they can turn to a very, very ugly situation very, very quickly. So, just a well set up car, a good competent driver, and hold on for the ride of your life.
Have you actually seen any rookies have a crack at it, or is that completely not allowed?
Look, we vet everybody that comes to the bottom of the hill, because it's obviously you've got to be a sober driver, seatbelt on, like all that sort of stuff. I have a bit of a pet talk with everyone at the bottom before they embark upon it. So we've had a few that have said a few false truths of their capabilities, and we have seen some pretty silly people have a crack at that because they just don't appreciate how dangerous and how serious this hill really is.
So there's some really great points. It is incredibly dangerous, it is incredibly serious, so you need a very capable off-road vehicle and you need skills behind the wheel.
100%.
So you've seen a lot of impressive rigs then attempt the hill, both stock and heavily modified. Has there been anything that hasn't made it up there that's really surprised you?
Mate, there has been thousands and thousands of cars that have hit that hill in the last probably 3 years. And you're probably looking at, I don't know, at a guess, probably 80% that fail. So you're probably, like that's a big failure rate. There's more failures than conquerors. And I've seen some big, tough rigs, like proper built rigs with, the big off-road tyres and the aftermarket diff locks and all the gear, and they still can't get up the hill. So, mate, we could be here for an hour going through the cars that should make it, that don't make it. So it comes down to a few things. The car may not be set up quite right. The driver's skill might not be quite where it should be. Or the conditions of the hill, because the conditions change all the time. Like whether it's wet, whether it's dry, whether it's a little bit wet, like it's always a different challenge every single Saturday at 4 o'clock when we open it.
Yeah, right. So that's really interesting because I want to talk about that aspect of challenge because there has been some chatter and some comments online, especially around GWM's attempts on the hill, that you may have graded the hill or made it easier for their attempt. Can you shine any light on that for us?
Well, it's all garbage, mate. So the biggest thing for me, right, is my own integrity and the integrity of that hill. So that hill deserves the respect of every off-roader in the country, if not on the planet. But at no time will I or have I ever adjusted the hill or graded the hill or made it easier or harder or whatever. The hill is in its natural state 100% of the time, And GWM conquering the hill when they conquered the hill is full kudos to them, because it wasn't altered or changed in any way, shape or form. But I'll tell you, one of the greatest comments that I've seen online was someone said, you must have sprayed a sticky compound so they can get traction on the hill. And I was just like, what even is that compound? I want to know, because...
Where do we get that to take it off-road for when we get stuck? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to spray it everywhere I go now.
Yep.
But no, it was not altered one little bit. Like, as much as people think it was, 100% it wasn't touched. And that, you've got my word on that.
Well, really appreciate you clarifying that, because we did see some comments, so fantastic. And look, lastly, I just want to ask you, what do you love most about the hill and watching people tackle the hill?
Probably the excitement when they come back around from conquering the hill. You know, like, it's one thing having the conversations at the bottom and, you know, the conversations at the office. When they get to the office, like, I'll back it up a bit. They get to the office and they're like, I'm here to do Beer OClock Hill. What time's it on? I've got this, you know, XYZ, whatever it may be, car. You know, it's all jacked up and pumped up. And when I open the hill at 4 o'clock, I'm like, where's the gentleman that was saying that he's going to take his car up that hill? Oh, no, I've had too many beers, mate. I'm going to give it a miss. Because when you get to the bottom of this hill, you get an appreciation of just how serious it is. So give me the question again.
What do you love most about it? Yeah.
Love. Well, what do I love? I love the achievement, the sense of achievement that the people have when they get around to the bottom. So they get to the top, they come around the bottom, and they're so chuffed. All their mates are patting them on the back, and, you know, that's their time to crack a beer for the afternoon. They've done the hill, and, you know, it's just a really, really good vibe down at the bottom of that hill.
Well, Lucas, really appreciate the insights. Thank you so much for your time today, mate.
No worries at all, and well done, GWM, conquering Beer OClock Hill, toughest hill on the planet.
You said it, not me.
All right, guys, enjoy the adventure. Talk to you soon.
Cheers, Lucas. Again, a big thanks to Lucas for your time earlier today. Much appreciated, mate. So, gentlemen, a lot to unpack from not only Lucas's comments, but about your attempts on Beer OClock Hill. Tim, I'm going to start with you.
Yep.
Why did GWM want to tackle this challenge?
So I think with GWM, a lot of people are still not aware of our brand, and a lot of people are not aware of our vehicles. And these are the key reasons for us to take it to Beer OClock Hill. You know, there's no point in me just saying how good the vehicles are. I know how good they are. Our R&D center and our factory knows how good our vehicles are, but customers need to know as well. And what better way is it to find a location that a lot of people have seen, especially around Queensland and New South Wales. They're familiar with that, how difficult that terrain, that track is. And watching 3 of our vehicles, one of them making it up 100% stock, you know, being the second vehicle to make it up the hill stock, it's just proof that our vehicles, not only are they capable 4x4s, they're also reliable and durable as well.
But stock, that's like a badge of honor on a badge of honor. Not
Correct.
only did it do Beer OClock Hill, it did it stock. That is so impressive. And you're right, actions do speak louder than words. You know, it's easy to say that a vehicle is very capable off-road, but to see it, that gets the massive tick. So what did you then learn from doing this?
So from our point of view, what we want to learn from this attempt is, you know, really how capable the vehicles are. So in some of the Cannon Alpha video in particular, you can really hear as the wheels were turning, the tires were spinning, you can hear just the muddy sort of sound. And yeah, a lot of people probably couldn't see that or hear that or even notice it, but Simon definitely felt it. Yeah, because and this is also one of the tires that got destroyed while we were doing it, and you can just see massive gouges on the sidewall, and you know, it definitely worked hard.
Now, you are the product czar. You know more about these cars than most people.
Yep.
How confident were you personally that they were going to get up?
Oh, I was 100% confident. You know, despite day one being a little bit moist and whatnot, we still had a solid crack at it. And not only that, we went there with 3 vehicles and expecting to do the hill and then drive back to Brisbane Airport that night. That's the type of confidence that we had in attempting this hill.
So for people that are maybe new to the brand, what technology in these off-road vehicles gave you that confidence?
Fundamentally, the world-renowned transfer case built by Borg Warner is one of the key reasons why we believe it's capable of attacking the hill. On top of that, standard rear diff lock on our vehicles, and these being the ultra grades or the high grade XSR, have the front diff lock as standard as well.
What about the high 4T technology? Can you tell us a little bit, unpack a little bit of that for us?
Yeah, the high 4T technology, as I sort of touched on earlier, is a plug-in hybrid system. Now, with GWM, it doesn't matter what technology it is. It is still a 4x4 ute. It needs to do 4x4 ute things. So we are not compromising in that sense, which is why we wanted to showcase, demonstrate, and prove to the general public that despite new technology, despite having the extra weight, the extra battery pack, etc., the vehicle's capability is not reduced because of it.
Excellent. And lastly, I just wanted to ask you, because I think you took Rob Tribbiani with you, who's the handling guru. Some of you will be very familiar with Rob, as we did a great interview with him on our last Inside GWM event. But for those that aren't, can you maybe tell us who Rob is and why he's involved with GWM and why you took him to Beer OClock Hill?
Yeah. So for those who don't know, Rob has been in the auto industry for over 25 years, I believe, doing a lot of suspension tuning and vehicle tuning overall. And on the 4x4 side, though, he's not. He does have experience, but even on the day when he was there, this is his words, he saw what Simon and Lucas were doing, and he was like, I'm never gonna do that. That's the type of exposure we wanted to give him as well, that a lot of our vehicles in GWM are capable 4x4 vehicles. That's why we wanted him firsthand in this sort of environment to explore a little bit and just once again get his confidence up in our vehicles when it does go off-road and does what they are designed to do.
I bet he would have loved it.
Yes.
He would have loved watching that. So you've just given us a lot of information there, Tim. So if you've got any questions about the technology in these 3 incredible vehicles, make sure you're putting them in a comment below. We're going to try to answer them and as many of them as we can a little later on. But now I want to get to you, Simon. You've been in the 4x4 world now for a long time. Where does this passion and this excitement come from?
I was fortunate enough to grow up working on farms in the Western District of Victoria. So shooting guns, riding in the back of utes, riding horses, looking after livestock, fixing fences, but seeing 4-wheel drives being used for their purpose from a very early age has stuck with me. My passion grew for all sorts of outdoor adventure, hunting, camping, fishing, not so good at fishing though, and of course 4-wheel driving that led me to where I am now.
Now, the GWM attempts at Beer OClock Hill weren't your first, were they? You've actually had a little bit of experience on it prior.
I have had 2 cracks at Beer OClock Hill. So back in around 2007, I was invited as a guest celebrity by a 4-wheel drive club that was running an event at the park. They gave me a fully worked extreme off-road vehicle, a Land Cruiser utility with a big V8 in it, 42-inch Super Swamper tyres that had actually competed at Tough Truck in New South Wales. For anyone who knows Tough Truck, they'll know how tough that is. And part of it, one of the stages, was to drive up Beer OClock Hill. I had no idea what the hill was at that stage. It was nowhere near as popular, but I got to drive it. The truck did it, no problems at all. But it was daunting. I don't remember the hill so much, but I remember how nervous I felt looking up at that rock face and was surprised that I did get to the top. Then again, around 3.5, 4 years ago, We were doing a bit of filming up at the Springs, and I'm not going to say it was peer group pressure, but that onus was always there.
It was peer group pressure.
The host of the show in his big tough vehicle, basically a 5-ton Iveco truck, was given the task of have a crack at Beer OClock Hill. Let's see how good you are. Let's see how good this vehicle is. And that's what it's like up there in Queensland. You are put on the spot. You've got the vehicle. You're supposed to be a big man with a 4-wheel drive, but can you do Beer OClock Hill? So it is a really standard, but also outstanding challenge to have a go at. We dropped the tyre pressures down. I knew exactly what I needed to do, and I drove that vehicle in one hit to the top of Beer OClock Hill. Now that's a 5-ton, extremely capable truck, triple diff locked, street legal on 37-inch tyres, down at super low pressures with bead locks, and we got it up there, no dramas at all. But that's a highly modified, extreme off-road vehicle. So it's no surprise, even given its weight, that I was able to get it to the top of that hill.
Okay, so then speaking of vehicles, when GWM approached you to tackle this, how much did you know about the brand and its vehicles?
I'm actually in a good position of knowing a lot about GWM. So from the early days of Great Wall Motors, we had a transition around 7-8 years ago where Great Wall Motors transitions itself into GWM. That created a whole new era, a whole new direction and a whole new ethos in quality, manufacturing, performance, and just an overall improvement in the brand and the vehicles. As a journalist, as a reporter, I also write a number of articles for other platforms. I kept an eye on that transition and how things had changed. So I knew that the GWM range, the 4x4 vehicles, had changed drastically. And what was coming out was something of a whole new level. Performance, quality, endurance. But I also have a lot to do with Asia. I do a lot of work, a lot of filming right throughout all of Asia and globally around the world. But specifically in China, we saw a big change. And that big change was, I mean, we all know that a lot of accessories get manufactured in China for the 4-wheel drive world globally. But for the first time, we actually had a community starting to grow. And that community had actually almost centered themselves around GWM. And that was a whole group of people who were taking self-pride in a vehicle that was being made locally, but taking it out and abusing it. So the videos that we were getting out of China and posting to our social media, creating a huge storm here because people were like, oh my God, Chinese vehicles. But we were showing how tough they were. We were showing how capable they were and showing some extreme conditions and things they were handling. So we had this whole blossoming community overseas. We had the whole new generation of GWM vehicles, and then the Tank 300 came out. And that has created a cult following in every market it has entered. So as a journalist, with my experience here in Australia with off-roading, my interest and understanding of four-wheel drives, four-wheel drive systems, and my interest and understanding of the global community, especially in China, I've had a lot to do with GWM, so I knew what was coming and I knew what we could get our hands on.
So then, obviously GWM approached you because you are a third party and could bring some credibility with your experience and you're impartial. What surprised you the most then about these three cars?
I knew they had all the goods. I knew that they were strong and capable, but the big thing that surprised me most is, guys, you're hanging onto your seat. You're at a 49-degree angle on that rock face, and forget what you experience when you're standing there and looking at it. When you get onto that rock face and you're in that mode of, I've got to get to the top of the hill, the cars were just super comfortable. The cars just felt super capable, and that confidence that I had to be able to sit there, to spin up the tyres, to try and drive them out, to back up a little bit and have another crack. The absolute sure-footedness of those vehicles, it just blew me away. At no point, as aggressive and wild as those hill climbs look, and the in-cab footage shows me being ragdolled around a little bit, but at no point did I feel I was out of control. At no point did I feel that myself or the vehicle was at risk, and at no point did I feel that I didn't have the power, the capability, or the things that I needed, except on day one when the traction, because of the wet slope and the mud, was slowing us down. But outside of that, the vehicle just gives you such a good sense of comfort and capability under those extreme circumstances.
Okay, that's some very, very flattering comments there, mate, for GWM. And off the back of that, and with some of the comments and speculation that we've seen online, I'm just going to ask you honestly, Were you asked to say or do anything by GWM that went against what you saw or did at Beer OClock Hill?
That's a really interesting question, and it's probably a bit disappointing because I wasn't asked or told basically anything. They virtually gave me no brief at all. They just said, Simon, we want you to do your best, get that to the top of the hill. I didn't know the specs of the vehicles. In the beginning, I didn't even know which vehicles or how many it would be. I knew nothing except we're doing Beer OClock Hill and we want you to get those GWMs to the top. They didn't care about my impressions, my thoughts, or what was going to go out publicly. They just trusted in me to do the job, and I was pretty excited and pretty proud to be chosen to do it.
That's great, because I think one of the things we want to clarify, and I'm sure you would agree, Tim, is that this needed to have credibility, and we want it to have credibility, and we want people watching to understand that, because obviously that would reflect very poorly not only on GWM but upon yourself too.
I think it's very important to add one point here, and I've used it a lot on social media. Guys, I was paid for my time. I'm a professional person, this is what I do, and GWM paid me to do this. But I can tell you 100%, hand on heart, no word of a lie, that hill is the judge, jury, and executioner. It doesn't matter what I say, it doesn't matter what GWM says in their advertising. If the car can't get to the top of the hill, it can't get to the top of the hill. There's no faking it. There's no helicopters, there's no winches. We either drive it to the top or we don't, and we did it. And I'll add that in the first day with those wet conditions, and we've got a big video coming out this Sunday which tells the whole story, the truth behind Beer OClock Hill, you will see in those wet conditions that we still got 2 of those 3 vehicles to the top. And that was insane, because I sat there at the bottom and I said, I know we can't get them to the top in these conditions, but we're going to give it a crack. We got 1 to the top, bog stock standard on factory fitted tyres, and the other one on some aftermarket all-terrains. And then, not being happy with that, we wanted to go back and have another crack on the next day. We drove those cars to and from Brisbane Airport. We did it a second day, drove them to and from Brisbane Airport, but on that second day, the track had dried out just enough, and we did fit some new all-terrain tyres because we had destroyed some tyres on the first attempt in the wet. But to be able to drive the 3 cars to the top of that hill, and the way that we did it, insanely capable, insanely confident, and I was very proud to be a part of that.
And as Lucas said earlier, with no sticky substance sprayed on there.
The comments online, you've graded the hill. I mean, I don't think people understand what it's like to run a bulldozer down a 49-degree slope, let alone try and run it up it. The 2 days that we did it were actually separated by a public weekend, where the park was open to the public and people came in and attempted to drive the hill like they did the weekend before, the weekend in the middle and the weekend after. There's no way you could maintain or do anything to that track. Or you filled in the holes. Anything that we fill those holes in on that slope is going to get shot out in 2 seconds. Like that hill, the judge, jury and executioner, you can't fake it.
So Tim, to come back to you quickly, and we've touched on it a little bit, the Tank 300 made it up with just the simple change of tyres. The XSR is the second vehicle ever to make it up stock, and then the Cannon Alpha PHEV got super close to the top on day 1, as you were saying, but the conditions weren't quite right. You ran out of time before being able to change the tyres. How confident were you then going back on day 2 that it was definitely going to do it?
Day 2 was very simple. The mission was all 3 cars up the hill. You know, we had the good weather, or at least better weather, and we've got a set of new all-terrain tyres. So my confidence was very, very high. And as Simon has demonstrated, you know, when we had these other tyres, the cars, all 3 of them, made them first go, every go. I think Simon used the word, what was it? The red rocket?
The red rocket.
XSR. So yeah, straight to the top, and that's what they all did. On the
I thought you were about to say Simon started getting bored of getting to the top so easily.
Well, actually, Lucas did start to get bored, so he started to come down and reverse back up.
Right, as if it wasn't challenging enough.
Yeah,
Lucas
exactly.
drove up, turned around at the top, drove down, and then looked at how far he could reverse up Beer OClock Hill, and he basically got all 3 cars halfway up.
Yep.
So intense,
Of course
intense.
So, Simon, lastly, your final thoughts on all 3 vehicles.
The Cannon Alpha PHEV is a big, luxurious vehicle. I've said it from day 1 when I've reviewed this vehicle. That and the Tank 500, which has basically the same vehicle from the B pillar forward, it's too much car for a four-wheel driver. It's too nice, luxurious and comfortable inside. Who wants to throw the dog in the back and get their muddy work boots in there? It's a beautiful vehicle. I'd still take one out to the outback, no problem at all. So it's a nice size. It's bigger than a standard ute. It's not quite as big as a Ram, a GMC, the Silverados, those bigger type vehicles, but it's got that additional performance, size and comfort to make it a big, safe, good toy hauling, towing, caravan pulling vehicle. The Tank 300 is a very special favourite that's close to my heart. It's smaller, it's a bit more compact, and remember on the first day we drove it to the top of the hill, I jumped out and I said, that is old school wheeling, but it's just exciting. That is the weekend play thing. That is a fantastic toy, accessorise it, take it out. You can still go touring, but it's really a great fun weekend play toy. The XSR though, it's really hard to pick between the XSR and the Tank 300 as my favourite. I'm so personally drawn to the Tank 300, but the XSR just sits in the middle as the car that can do everything. Off the factory floor with the tuned suspension, the snorkel, the all-terrain tyres, front and rear lockers, and the proper four-wheel drive system, that thing is just a crazy, hard-working workhorse for the tradie during the day, and an awesome tow the motorbikes, throw the boat into the river, tow anything, drive anything, do any hill, including Beer OClock hill in factory form. I mean, that vehicle, throw a few accessories on it, and you've got the dream touring, four-wheel drive play toy. It's got everything. So yeah, I'm blown away by all three vehicles. I'm a big fan of them. I have been for a long time, and yeah, Beer OClock hill has just even impressed me more about what these vehicles can do. And probably the last thing for me is it's not just Beer OClock hill. I've been watching these vehicles for 5, 6, 7 years, and I've got a mate that we work with in Perth who's driving around with a Tank 300 on 39-inch tyres. People complain about, oh, they're not strong enough. They're going to blow CVs. This guy's driving around on 39-inch tyres, doing hard off-roading and not blowing anything. Beer OClock hill proved how robust they are, but I've seen that endurance. We get a lot of comments from our Facebook followers. There are guys out there now with Cannons who are approaching 300,000 kilometres on the clock with no issues. The cars are easy to service, they're inexpensive to buy, they're great performance, standout off-road vehicles. I can't say enough about them, and sure, I'm a fan. And it's not because I'm paid, but because I've tested and driven them and seen them around the world and what they can do.
Well, Tim, that's got to feel pretty good, right?
Yes. Like I said, we know it, Simon knows it because he's, around the vehicle, and we just need to now demonstrate it to our customers and our audiences that our vehicles are capable, are durable and reliable.
All right, well, speaking of customers and audiences, this feels like a pretty good moment then to jump into the Q&A. So let's kick it off. You two can fight about who wants to answer which
Rock,
question.
paper, scissors.
Rick has asked, let's get honest, what's the real world fuel usage and EV range of the Cannon PHEV when towing or off-roading?
Yep.
Good question.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
sorry, I'm going to give that question to Tim because I don't care about fuel economy, or I'm all about drivability. So I can either do it or it can't do it. I'll put the fuel in and pay for it, I don't care. So definitely the technical aspects for Tim.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the PHEV is for a specific type of audience and customer base. If you are driving a PHEV Cannon Alpha as an example, you would be maybe doing 1 or 2 trips max a year, which means day to day, you would be maximizing on your electricity or EV range. And as we've seen already, some media have been able to achieve 110, 115 kilometers in EV range. And on top of that, when you're towing, the thing with technology, right, is you really need to understand the technology to get the most out of it. There are 2 things you need to consider when you're towing with the Cannon Alpha plug-in hybrid. One is you've got your normal eco, normal, and sport mode. One key difference is in sport mode, the engine would remain on all the time. And if I'm towing something like a 3-ton caravan, that's what I would be in. So first of all, that means you have constant power. When you're going off, taking off at the lights, or when you're overtaking in rural roads, you always have the power, you always have the engine on. Second thing then is the hybrid drivetrain mode. You have EV mode, you have hybrid mode, and you have also something called an intelligent mode. Now, intelligent mode would actually help you hold the battery charge anything between 30 to 80% in your battery, which means at any moment you can just put your foot down and you'll have 300 kilowatts, 750 Newton meter of torque. However, when you do that to hold charge, obviously the consumption is going to increase because the engine is driving the vehicle, dragging the trailer, and trying to top up the battery at the same time. But if you're towing to a location that is 200 kilometers away, and you know the battery can do about 100 kilometers of EV only range, what I would do is then switch it into sport mode and hybrid mode. That way the engine remains on. It will slowly deplete the battery, and by the time you arrive at your destination, that would maximize your fuel consumption. So it really depends on the type of towing you're doing. If you are constantly towing, I would actually recommend a diesel over the plug-in hybrid, because if you're doing it constantly, it's just going to deplete the battery very quickly every time you tow. You're better off doing diesel.
Perfectly answered, mate. Perfectly answered. I'm going to throw this next question straight to you, Simon. Stuart was asking, and you touched on it before, but I'm going to let you go wild with this one. Could the Cannon PHEV really tackle Cape York, or is it just a one-hill wonder?
Well, these things are hybrid, so they're charging as they drive. So it's actually quite a good vehicle for touring because you've got that dual battery system already built into the vehicle. With that reliability of the ICE, internal combustion engine, you've got the best of both worlds. You've got that instant power and torque on demand as you need it, and you've got the reliability and performance of filling up at every fuel station as you go. It's a no-brainer. They're a good crossover vehicle, and definitely if it was towing, I'd possibly be looking at a diesel. But as far as going out touring, if you're definitely not going to be towing all the time, they're a capable, strong, well-built vehicle. There are no reasons why you can't do it. It's not a one-hit wonder, and as I've said before, there are plenty of these vehicles. We took a hybrid down to Robe and did all of the beaches, and the torque of the Tank 500 was just phenomenal in the sand. It made it so easy to traverse, get through the soft sand, all those types of things for off-roading. It's a standout. And whilst some of us might not be the biggest fan of EVs, I think a hybrid is the perfect balance. And there's no reason why it can't be a good, competent and reliable touring vehicle.
And to prove that as well, GWM China has actually recently entered the hopefully I pronounced this right, Taklaman Rally, yeah, with the Hi4T plug-in hybrid system. And it's actually won the title for new energy vehicle.
There you
using
go.
the Hi4T. Yes.
So again, another badge of honour. Tick. Another question about fuel. So obviously this one's for you, Tim.
Yep.
Josh has asked, why do some people feel the Cannon PHEV uses more fuel than expected, and how does hybrid technology actually help on tough tracks? Maybe you can add tacking onto this on the end.
Yeah, once again, I think it really depends on how you use the technology. The good thing is if you simply put it in normal mode as well as hybrid with the electric drivetrain, then you will get sort of the best of both worlds without having to consider too much. As long as you top up the battery overnight at home, you're going to get very, very good efficiency. If you are really mindful about the whole thing, then you can play around with EV mode, and you can have literally Monday, with 115 kilometers of EV range, you can literally do Monday to Friday daily commute in just electric. And then over the weekend, if you need to go beyond 115 Ks, you just keep going because the petrol engine is just going to kick in and the car just keeps going.
The instant torque and power that you get from those electric motors is nothing like driving an internal combustion engine. Petrol or diesel, you've got turbo lag, you've got heat soak, you've got all range of things that slow down the delivery of power to the rear wheels, to all four wheels. But when you've got that electric motor in extreme off-road situations where you've got half a metre, 1 metre to develop some torque, if you're bogged down in soft sand on a beach, if you're in mud, if you're trying to get up a rocky step, most people who've done real serious four-wheel driving will know what it's like to hit the accelerator pedal, the car moves slowly, and then as you hit the obstacle, the tyres get the torque and they start spinning, but it's too late. That electric delivery of power from the instant go-get is insanely awesome for off-roading.
We just don't have time for turbo lag anymore.
No time.
There's also another area. So personally, I've done quite a lot of towing testing with the Hi4T system as well. And something that I actually needed to remind myself when I was doing the towing was, with a 3-ton caravan at the back, taking off at the red lights, I was keeping up and sometimes even faster than the rest of traffic. And not only that, on the highway, when I was doing highway testing while towing the van, I was doing 100, 110, keeping up with traffic. And even at rural roads, I was attacking the hill, maintaining speed limit with the 3-ton van in the back. And when I did that testing, we actually had a few other competitor diesel vehicles. And I noticed two things. One is around the back roads in particular, and also the highway, when you need the power, you just don't have access to the power. And not only that, as I was driving around the mountains and whatnot, I noticed my average speed was about 15, 20 k's slower, because I would be flooring it and the car just wouldn't accelerate, or some of these diesel utes and SUVs were so loud in comparison to the Hi4T. Like, this thing would just, you wouldn't believe until you've tried driving these things, towing a 3-ton van or 3.5-ton van on the highway. When you put the foot down, it just moves. So this is the type of thing that's very hard to demonstrate. I'm gonna try though. I'm gonna try it. Beer OClock Hill was the first way to demonstrate the capability. I'm trying to come up with different ways to demonstrate it too.
And as we keep saying, if you don't believe us, you don't have to take our word for it. Go and test drive one for yourself. Try one for yourself. Paul has asked, what kind of clearance and diff setup does the Cannon PHEV have stock, and how does that hold up in real off-road or on real off-road terrain?
So the ground clearance from memory is around 220 mil, and overall the front is in the independent front control, and the rear is a live axle. So overall, this is a very familiar setup for a lot of four-wheel drivers. Comes standard with bash plates at the bottom for the front end as well. The battery pack, specifically in the PHEV, actually sits quite high up into the chassis rail. So ground clearance for the battery pack is 420 mil, which is quite a lot. And like this car, we've been to Beer OClock Hill with a rocky terrain, and like the battery protection plate did scrape a little bit, but that's what it was designed to do.
Andrew's asked a really interesting question, and Simon, I'm going to come to you for this because you talked about it before. How does the Cannon PHEV handle corrugation heavy tracks like the gun barrel highway? How do you think it would go on something gnarly like that?
So same again, a little bit different. We've tested the Tank 500 out through Robe, as I said, but some of the tracks we did there were a little bit corrugated. And the suspension on these vehicles, and across the board actually, they're all set up with a really nice, soft, supple suspension. So from factory, they handle it really well. You've always got the option though, there are loads of companies around, and this is one of the things that I really admire and appreciate about GWM, is that because of what's happened in China with the community, but also the cult following around the globe, you have got no end of aftermarket accessories available for these vehicles. So if you, for some reason, want to change the factory suspension, you've got choices in many different brands to choose from, to option it up, to change it out. So if you're concerned about how it handles corrugations, although it does it quite well, opt up for a for an upgraded suspension. That's what the upgrades are there for.
Tim, Roberts asked, the Ford Territory had 140 kilowatts and 440 newton meters. How far ahead is the Cannon plug-in really?
0 to 100 in this is sub 7 seconds. That is one of the fastest utes out there right now. I mean, so I don't know what else I can add to that with 0 to 100, and also it's on paper performance. Yeah.
There's a simple answer. How far ahead is it really? Significantly. Yeah. There you go. Couple more questions. Corey's asked, what makes the Cannon's 3.5 tonne tow rating and twin locked setup worth comparing to Isuzu or an 80 series rig?
The ease of their ability to do something extreme like Beer OClock Hill, that's not an example of what we expect the viewers to be doing every weekend. But it shows you at the extreme level, the halo, the right out there, the capability of what these vehicles can do and the benefit of having front and rear lockers. And what the front and rear lockers do realistically is that they allow you to traverse challenging, rough terrain. And it doesn't have to be severely tough or challenging. It could be at the local boat ramp, pulling your boat out on a slippery ramp. It means that you are putting less strain through the vehicle and you're at greater, reducing the risk of damaging the environment. So you're protecting the vehicle, you're protecting the environment, you're driving a lot less harder. So the added expense or the added benefit of having a front locker is huge for these vehicles. What we put these vehicles through with Beer OClock Hill shows the durability of the vehicles, but what I've seen them do over the last 5, 6, 7 years, the strength of the components and the driveline speaks for itself, and that's really what you're paying for as a difference to what these other vehicles have offered for a long time and are now being called out for it.
And apart from that, I think GWM really stands for great value for money as well. And as Simon has touched on, the front and rear diff lockers as standard. You know, there are hardly any other OEMs that offer this from factory, even on their most expensive grade vehicles. So this is definitely a standout. And as I mentioned the Tekla Man rally earlier, the CVs and the drivetrain, all of that was still standard. Only thing that got control arms, everything. The only thing that got upgraded for that rally was suspensions as well as bash plates. But from a engine, gearbox, CVs, control arms, all of that was box standard. And that just goes to show, it's a few 100 kilometers of rally racing, and they managed to all compete, all managed to perform, and there was a bit of a crash, but that was the only thing that stopped. It didn't actually stop it, it slowed it down. That was all it did.
Temporarily slowed it down.
Next time they can get Lucas and I to come over and drive for them. Yeah. No more crashes.
Well, look, gentlemen, thank you so much for all of those insights. I mean, we could keep talking about Beer OClock Hill and the capabilities of these three cars and the rest of the GWM range all day, but we've already been talking for a long time. So it's probably a good place to wrap it up. So Tim, Simon, Lucas, thank you so much. A lot to think about there. And again, I'm sure everyone watching at home is going to take a lot out of that conversation. Now, again, if we didn't get to your question, so sorry. Don't worry, keep dropping them in the comments. Our team at GWM is going to be diving in there and making sure that they get around to answering those questions online. So stand by, keep an eye on the comments. Again, if you're keen to learn more about any of the vehicles we've talked about today or any of the other vehicles in the GWM range and family, take one for a test drive yourself. Just head on over to gwmanz.com and you can explore the full range of vehicles there for yourself. Don't forget, we've got those Ampol fuel vouchers to give away too. So make sure you share your amazing off-road moments using the hashtag GWM Australia or hashtag Go With More. Finally, thank you. Whether, as I said earlier, whether you're new to the brand or you're a long-time fan, we love having you a part of these GWM events. I mean, this would be pretty pointless if we were doing these videos and no one was watching. So a massive thank you to you all. So next month, we're going to do it all again. Keep tuning in. Check back to the website and our social channels for all the latest news and details of that next live event. Post up those off-road moments. But for now, drive safely and we'll catch you next month.